You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now.
Thank you. Good looking.
Welcome to 535. It is Tuesday, July 21st. It's the last week that the House is in session before campaign season starts in earnest. August recess is right around the corner, and there are a lot of things that members hope to get done in the next upcoming weeks and before everything just pivots straight to campaigns and messaging. But first, I want to talk about the 14th Amendment, and there's nobody better to join and talk about this than Congresswoman Analilia Mejia, new Democrat from New Jersey.
Yes,
welcome to
you.
the show.
Appreciate
you making your debut on 535.
Ooh, thank you so much.
Yeah, so
I'm
let's
excited.
Let's get right into it. So we remember last month the Supreme Court, well, the Trump administration obviously challenged birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court not overwhelmingly, but not all of the Supreme Court justices essentially said, we are keeping birthright citizenship as it is. But there's a number of Democrats in the House who said, maybe we should talk about, at least try and legislate or see what we can do on this particular issue. It's not one that, just case closed. How did this task force come to be that you're co-chair of?
Okay, well, first, thank you for covering this subject. Here's what I'll share. It has become clear that this administration is attempting to whittle down the protections that are enshrined in the 14th Amendment. To remind viewers, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are essentially the Reconstruction Amendments. It is what many historians call the second founding of the United States. At the beginning of our nation, we say all men are created equal, but we only mean landowning, cisgendered, Protestant white men. It is after the Civil War that we grab those words of freedom and we expand them to cover more individuals. Birthright citizenship, due process, equal protection, in fact, a participatory democracy is only made possible because of this second founding. And when you look at the totality of the actions of this administration, both in their first and second term, you could see that the Huns are at that gate. There's a whittling away of the 14th Amendment and their protections. Bodily autonomy, marriage equality, rights for immigrants, rights for anyone before the state or police, for example. All of these are enshrined in the 14th, and all of these have been systematically challenged, either by executive order, Supreme Court decisions, or anything in between.
So how did this come to be? Were you the one kind of like a driving force, or did you have a number of members and you guys kind of got together and say, hey, we should talk about what we can do on a number of these fronts?
Well, I'm not your traditional politician. In fact, this is the first public office that I've held. For 25 years, I've been an organizer and an advocate building civic engagement and essentially working with voters to really own their rightful place in our government. And again, it is our participatory democracy is only possible when we are equal before the law. The thing that makes us equal before the law is the 14th. I've been in Congress for the last 2 months, and when I arrived here, I started talking to leadership about how it is very evident that our ideological opponents are sustaining a war against our rights and responsibilities, and the American people can benefit from having a campaign to ensure that we both understand it and that we're analyzing how it's been weakened so that we could correct it once we hopefully regain the House in the 120th.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. But has the task force met and kind of laid those guidelines and goals as to what you'd like to achieve? Because obviously there's only there's a week left, and then you guys come back. There's just the mad dash to fund the government. There's a number of things that, especially as a new member, you will soon see happen very quickly.
For sure. So I'm joined by members who have been in this body for some time, who in fact have championed these issues before coming to Congress. My colleague, Representative Cleaver from Missouri, has been a longtime advocate on this issue, as well as my colleague Emily Randall from Washington, and my colleague from California, Latifah Simon. Here's what we're planning on doing. We're going to be holding hearings, calling and working with experts. We're considering field hearings across our districts and the United States. So again, we can have a better understanding of how these protections have been weakened, again, through policy, through action, through courts, so that we could rebuild. I mean, in order for us to really have a solution to what is a clear problem, we need to analyze the way in which our protections have in fact been weakened or attempted to be weakened.
And if you all are lucky enough to have the majority, is it fair to assume once you go through all those hearings, gather all that information, you all will either propose policy
whether it's
or
legislative corrections or administrative corrections? I mean, I am a proponent of really taking a clear look at the Supreme Court, understanding and enacting ethics reforms to ensure that our Supreme Court justices are in fact adhering to our Constitution and are upholding our protections. I also think that we need to hold this president accountable for the way in which he's not only encroached on expanded his executive overreach and whittled away at congressional power, but also undermining the will and the protection of the American people. I mean, again, in order to find a solution, we need to have a clear diagnosis.
You sit on the Homeland Security Committee. I know that the committee for some time has also been holding kind of shadow hearings, shadow meetings, essentially preparing potentially for the majority. You all recently sent a letter to Secretary Markwayne Mullin just in light of these latest killings by ICE, both in Texas and Maine, where these immigrants were misidentified and unfortunately lost their life. What's the status of that letter?
Well, their lives were stolen from them by a rogue agency that has been flushed with cash, but little training, little oversight, little accountability. I mean, I also had an opportunity to question Secretary Mullin about what is happening in detention centers. I visited both the Delaney Hall and the Elizabeth Detention Center, and I can attest that what is happening in these detention centers is unjust and unfair. You have individuals who have been violently stripped from their communities, are being denied their due process and equal protection rights, which are contained in the 14th Amendment of our Constitution, to everyone who is has foot in these United States, and then simultaneously being harmed medically. I met many detainees who have chronic health conditions who are not receiving the medical care, their medication that they are due in order to stay healthy. And I contend that long term we are harming people. So again, we're going to hold this government accountable. It is our duty as representatives of the American people, and that is my intention. And within Homeland Security and these hearings, both field and here in Congress, what we're trying to do is gather evidence, gather understanding, so again, in the 120th, when we hopefully reclaim the House, we're able to hold our own government accountable.
And are Democrats already thinking of how to more strongly codify due process in light of what, again, House Homeland Security Democrats have been observing during this time?
I contend that there's no additional codification necessary other than our Constitution. But here's the deal: in order for us to protect our rights, we have to fully understand them. Again, why this task force to me is critical and important, because there is an education component to the American people that we're hardwiring in. I want to make sure that the average American understands that so many of the freedoms that they love about America, so many of the things that we hold dear about being American, our right to speak our minds, our right to ensure that we are equal before the law, our ability to engage in self-governance, it is enshrined in our Constitution, and it is our duty to protect it, because again, if there are unscrupulous individuals, including our president, who will strip it from our very hands.
Congressman Congresswoman, thank you so much for coming to talk about this. Anytime you have anything new or developments on these fronts, please let us know.
We'll do. Thank you.
We'll be right back with many, many more interviews today. Stay tuned.
You're watching 535. We'll be right back.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. It's time to tell Washington, keep America in the lead.
I work hard. My dad worked hard. That's where I got it from. What I take home is my future and my kids' future. And if I can invest in companies, they're going to reflect my principles, what I believe in. So why would those companies hire outside people to tell them to embrace principles I don't believe in? Congress must protect the financial future of Americans from the foreign-owned duopoly that answers to no one.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rome. I've played many roles on TV and film, but today I want to speak to you as myself about a cause that's very dear to my heart. The Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund provides free help to those who have cancer and those who wish to prevent it. They've also worked tirelessly on banning cancer-causing chemicals in our homes and neighborhoods. I want to thank them as a mom for protecting our families. Please donate today at the Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund at stopcancerfund.com.
We are Lions International, one association of global volunteers, one foundation for humanitarian grants, shaping the future, one act of kindness at a time. We are on a mission to improve health and well-being, to strengthen communities, to serve a world in need. We are Lions International.
To learn more, visit lionsclubs.org.
Here on Capitol Hill, the 535 are in charge, the members of Congress. But in a democracy, in the people's house, you need to be heard as well. So if you have questions, or comments, or ideas, submit them to us at 535.news, because here with us, the floor is yours.
Welcome back to 535. We're live from the Cannon Rotunda, and I'm Susan Davis. Joining me now are Congressman Bruce Westerman of Arkansas and Congressman Jared Golden of Maine to talk about the need for speed. I had to make that joke. It was too easy. Congressman Westerman, this is a reference to your SPEED Act, which stands for Standardizing, Permitting, and Expediting Economic Development Act. It's already passed the House. What would it do?
Well, it would make the permitting process work for America again. And it's not my SPEED Act, it's our SPEED Act. It passed with bipartisan support here in the House. It's over in the Senate where it's getting a lot of attention. But you know, we're in a scenario where it takes an average of 4.5 years to get a permit. If you're talking about mining or offshore oil production, it takes much longer than that. So for America to be competitive and to get prices lower, we need to be able to build things in America again so we can lead the world in making stuff. That's what America's about, and we've lost that advantage because we've quit building things and we're farming that out to other countries.
What was your motivation to support this legislation, and how do you think it will solve the problem?
To be honest, I moved on to the committee just this year after spending 6 years on Small Business Committee. And I stayed on Armed Services, but I wanted to come on to Bruce's committee. And my top goal was to do some work around fishermen in Maine. But I had followed pretty closely with Joe Manchin, his work on permitting reform. I was bought into the package that was close to getting done and failed, and quickly identified that this would be a top priority of this committee and this Congress. And there was a lot of previous work to stand on and hopefully, bring it across the finish line. I don't often get too into the weeds on it because I think just at a higher level what Bruce said is like
anyone you talk to who's trying to build just about anything in America understands that the process is incredibly slow and results in a lot of failures, and there's just a ton of frustration. There can be disagreement on the nuts and bolts, but at that like higher level, very few people would contest that we don't have a problem.
As I understand it, what this bill would do is it changes NEPA. I don't say NEPA, I believe it's how you would say it, the National Environmental Policy Act, which in researching this, I learned that it is the most litigated environmental statute. And that would seem to be probably one of the biggest drivers of delays in permitting reform.
Yeah, and it's kind of a wonky thing that most Americans don't get into the weeds on. If you
That's
look
what we're here for.
Yeah, so NEPA was put in place with good purpose to protect the environment, obviously, and we do a great job of that here in America. But again, just to get what's called a record of decision or your NEPA permit takes an average of 4.5 years, but that's not the end of the story. Once you get the permit, there's something called judicial review, where currently there's up to 6 years that record of decision can be challenged in a court, and a judge can issue an injunction and stop a project. So what this does is it creates a ton of uncertainty with investors that they want a return on their investment, but if it's going to take 4.5 years to get a permit and who knows how long to actually build something, and we've got case after case of projects that never got built where people lost billions of dollars, so that drives investors away. We need certainty regardless of what kind of project it is, and that's what the SPEED Act does. It keeps the environmental protections in place so that it happens quickly to get your permit, whether that's yes or no, to get the decision, and then it gives protection on the back end so that these lawsuits can't get drug out forever, and then at the end of the day, you don't get to build your project.
What do you say to environmentalists, though, that raise concerns about this bill and say that this process is necessary to make sure some of these infrastructure projects that take up huge amounts of land don't pose environmental risks?
Well, one thing I'd point out that Bruce has spoken to many times during hearings or other times that we've been talking about this matter is NEPA came before Clean Air, Clean Water Act. Those bedrock laws are not a part of this reform that we're talking about. We're not really touching that, and I think in light of that we can kind of go back and look at NEPA, see where it's necessary, but in light of those two big laws, like maybe some of this can be streamlined without actually opening up the door to unnecessary risks of pollution.
And that's a great point, because NEPA is a process. That's not just me saying that, that's the Supreme Court has ruled on that, and the 7 counties decision and other decisions, and the process has been corrupted. The basic laws, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, those are still going to be followed. We're just going to do it in a timely manner and take away the weaponization of NEPA that's being used to stop projects. And the result of that, Susan, is that these projects are being built overseas. We're dependent on China for critical minerals now because we can't mine the ones that are here in the United States. The environmental damage that other countries do, not just environmental but also human rights issues that are violated, those things don't happen in the U.S. If we build it in the U.S., we're doing better things for the environment. So the groups that are killing projects in the name of the environment are actually doing more harm to the environment and more harm to human rights.
I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, just to put a bit of a finer point on it, like the concerns being raised by some elements of the environmental community. We had some of our strongest supporters came from renewable energy developers, from the industries themselves, where they were actually able to come in and say, actually, like solar was a good example in the hearing for our bill. They were able to lay it out by the numbers, like actually we're facing more litigation than any other kind of would-be energy projects out there, more than oil and gas. And like one of my first interactions with this problem was in Maine, where there was a proposed utility line to bring hydropower.
I was reading about that
right
this
through
morning,
there. Yeah, so you said you've been to Maine, like that's right in that, close to that neck of the woods where you were staying, and that actually split the environmental community, where some of them were for the project, some of them were opposed it. There's very strange bedfellows, but what everyone could agree is that collectively there was like 5 or 6 years of basically litigation around the project, even a voter referendum that voted against the project, and then the courts overturned that anyways as unconstitutional. So like at the end of the day, no one is really pleased with the process there. So I think At the micro level, they might disagree from one thing to another, but at a macro level, everyone would say, like, this was just a complete, judicial mess.
I wonder, and I'm curious about this because there's an element to this issue. It's complicated, right? But there's also all politics is local component to me, in that everyone seems to agree we need more energy, we need more power, people want to build, but there's a little bit of NIMBYism in this, not in my backyard, and state of Maine is a good place like this. Yes, there's environmental activists, but there's also constituents. A lot of times when you tell your constituents, hey, this pipeline's going to go through our neighborhood, there's a lot of pushback to it. So I wonder how much tension you find in this conversation where people, they want the end result, they just don't want it to affect their lives or their communities.
It's NIMBY for me and not for thee kind of mentality. We want to do this in America, just not where I live, but take mining for an example. The deposits are where God put them. You can't build a mine if there's not deposits there. Because of NIMBYism, again, we're dependent on China for all these critical minerals, which has become a national security issue. And it's not because we don't have them here. We've been blessed with those deposits. We just have to mine them. In 1995, we produced 3 times more copper than China, and today they produce 11 times more than us. We have 2 copper smelters, and they have 60. That's what's happened when we said not in my backyard. So it's in China's backyard, and we've exported our environmental guilt, and along with that, we're exporting our wealth, we're exporting our national security, and we're making other countries rich at Americans' expense.
How big of a piece of the puzzle do you see permitting reform in the AI race in terms of we will need dramatically more energy resources? Is permitting reform a critical problem in that front, or is it just a piece of it?
If I could help Bruce, because the AI thing is it can be controversial, and there's a lot of uncertainty around it. But if you just move back out, around AI, there's all this talk, in the current administration, in the Congress, this conversation has been going on for years, in general, reindustrialization, bringing back capacity to do it here, to make it here, to gain, a new level of self-sufficiency, shorten up supply lines, something everyone was talking about during COVID. All of this hangs on permitting reform. There's no way we succeed in any of that, whether it's AI, whether it's manufacturing, new things here that we used to but have let go but want back, critical defense needs. None of that's going to happen if we don't have some reforms to NEPA and just to the entire permitting process.
There's also, go ahead.
Well, I agree with what Jared's saying. It's about much more than AI, but AI is kind of the shiny object out there right now.
Yeah.
And again, let's look at what China's doing. They're building 120 gigawatts of coal power every year. That's a new coal-powered plant every 2 to 3 days that they're bringing online in China because AI and data centers use so much electricity. We're in a cold war with China on AI. If we don't have energy to power AI, we're not going to win that cold war. And some people look at the strategies on that and say it's not going to be a pretty scenario if China reaches what they call superintelligence in AI before we do. So that's driving a lot. It's in the news a lot, but it also comes back to that industrial base, to making things here in America. And we both represent rural areas.
Yeah.
Rural areas is where our resources reside, and rural America is suffering because of a lack of being able to make things from our resources anymore.
There's also, it's a good segue too, there's a jobs component to this, right? More infrastructure projects equal more jobs. I believe you did a op-ed with Majority Leader Steve Scalise, and you said the bill was a, quote, generational opportunity to deliver higher wages and real affordability for working families. Explain your argument there.
Well, let's go back to mining, for example, and you could apply this to energy, to all sorts of things, but mining. The USGS and Commerce put out a report every year that shows how much raw material we mine and recyclable material. It's worth about $140 billion in its raw form. When you process that, the second phase, that $140 billion becomes $1 trillion. When that processed material goes into manufacturing and making things, it becomes $4 trillion to our GDP. So you take $140 billion of raw material, and it means $4 trillion to our GDP. That means tremendous amount of good paying jobs and wealth that's being generated along the way. Multiply that over and over with timber, with energy, with mining, with new energy plants. All of that can create good jobs and help grow our economy, and also can help address our debt, because we pay about 17.5% of our GDP goes into federal revenues every year. So we can address many issues by fixing permitting reform so that America can build and innovate again.
So for me, like, Bruce can lay out all the numbers in support of like why this is going to be good for the economy, is going to support good paying jobs, but a lot of times I just say, like, don't take it from me, take it from workers themselves.
Yeah.
So when you go talk to the folks that are building out our transportation infrastructure, people who will be building manufacturing centers or working at them, the laborers union strongly in support of this. They're doing all kinds of energy work, from oil and gas pipelines to solar, right? Deployment. Like, the laborers, they just know for a fact, like, this is going to be good for our jobs, and could be more jobs for other people to be a part of our union, our workforce. So I just trust them.
I'm always hesitant to ask House members what the Senate's going to do, because no one knows what the Senate's going to do. But the bill, as I said, passed the House. It seems to me to be held up a bit in the Senate due to some maybe unrelated issues. Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of what the state of play is, and whether this has a realistic prospect of either passing as a standalone or maybe riding on a larger vehicle before the Congress is over?
I know Senator Capito is working extremely hard. Senator Whitehouse is working with her. I've got confidence the Senate's going to come up with language, and how it gets across the finish line, I don't know. I just know it has to get across the finish line, and they've been working extremely hard. They've been holding everything close to the vest, but I'm encouraged from the information and feedback I get from them.
I feel like with the Senate, everyone always focuses on how very slow process. Things can, feel like they're moving at a crawl. Things go there to die all the time. But, the other side of the Senate is, when they suddenly decide to move on something, they can be like lightning fast. Right. So it's like
glacial or lightning fast are the two Senate
so there's all these
right?
concerns, like we're running out of time, seems like there's no progress. Like, Bruce and I know, we're engaged. We know there's talks going on. We know the White House is engaged, and I still feel pretty bullish that there's going to be plenty of space, maybe post-election, where something could come together pretty quick. Of course, as you know, like as we saw before with the Barrasso bill, like, it can also suddenly fall apart in the 11th hour. So,
I want to do. We're going to do a little segment on 1 minute, but Congressman Golden, I have to ask you one political question, because it would be dereliction of duty if I didn't. About state of politics in your state, considering everything that has happened within the Democratic Party, what's your level of confidence that that Senate race is still going to be competitive come November?
Oh boy, I'm not going to answer that one. You can ask me sometime in another interview. Yeah, you did. Someone asked me the other day, like, how does someone piece together a winning campaign in 100 days? And I said, well, they could start by looking at my 4 victories in a tough district, and the kind of I hesitate to even say northern part of Maine. I got like 80% of the state, but like, there's a blueprint there, but it can be done. But I'm just I'll put it this way: like, I haven't engaged in a single campaign this year in the state of Maine, and I'm not.
Hopefully, your own.
I'm not running for re-election.
Oh, correct.
So, whether it was primaries or general elections, and the Maine delegation has never endorsed against one another in any single race since I came here. So, I'm not really playing, political pundit on that race. Too close to home.
It must be nice not to have to do campaign work anymore in an election year.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it.
If you give me 2 more minutes, I'm going to ask you a couple of just what in our segment we call 1 minutes. These are probably the toughest questions you're going to be faced today. Congressman Westerman, I am going to start with you. If you could fix one thing about Congress, what would you do?
Fix the Senate? No.
It's funny how often that answer comes up.
I would make us focus on real issues instead of all the stuff that gets the clicks and the time on cable news. There's a lot of people that are serious about the future of the country, working on things like the SPEED Act and on fixing our forest and all the things that I think are important to Americans, and on working on things that really help with the federal debt and help with the cost of living. But there's so much fluff that gets all the attention. I would like to fix that.
What about you, Congressman Golden?
When I was working with a group of people on the infrastructure law in 2021, early 2021, one of my colleagues who'd been in the Congress for like 4 years said, you know, this is the first time I feel like I've actually been a legislator, which is a pretty crazy statement to spend 4 years here and feel like you've never legislated. So I would say anything that could result in more actual legislating opportunities, specifically for rank and file members, not just like chairs and ranking members in leadership.
If someone were to go to your district tomorrow and they asked you where to go eat first, where do you send them?
Well, if you're looking for the best food, I'd try to get my wife to cook them a meal. But if you're in the South, you need to try the barbecue. Although we got all kinds of food, but great barbecue.
Lobster roll, is that too easy?
Yeah, you know, that's a dangerous question because it's like you're gonna make a bunch of people unhappy and
hey, you're not running.
Select few happy. Yeah, you're right. I think what I would tell people is get out of the tourist traps. You know, if you're talking lobster rolls and you're trying to find like the best one, like get up the coastline into the working waterfront areas and go find yourself one that doesn't, you know, cost you an arm and a leg.
So
Congressman Jared, go ahead.
The best lobster roll I've had in Maine was from a food truck. It was fantastic.
The best one I've had is from a gas station, so I think you're right. Congressman Jared Golden of Maine, Congressman Bruce Westerman of Arkansas, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
We're going to take a really quick break and we will be right back.
You're watching 535 and we'll be right back.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. It's time to tell Washington, keep America in the lead.
A simple blood test can detect Alzheimer's years before symptoms appear. Congress can connect Americans to early, accurate dementia diagnosis by supporting the Bipartisan Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act, allowing Medicare to cover blood-based Alzheimer's screening. Congress has acted to cover mammograms and other life-saving screenings. Now it can redefine Alzheimer's care, unlocking early detection and access to FDA-approved treatments when they work best. Congress, it's up to you. Paid for by the Alzheimer's Association.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Brody Mullins here with Ann Bradbury, President and CEO of the American Exploration and Production Council. Tell us about your association.
Great. So AXPC represents the leading independent producers of oil and natural gas. In the U.S., 90% of all the natural gas that's produced is actually produced by independent producers, and about 80% of all the oil that's produced is produced by independent producers. So my companies, my association, are really the backbone of U.S. energy production in the U.S.
And what are the main issues you're facing on Capitol Hill right now?
Permitting reform is a huge one. It's our biggest legislative priority and where we're spending most of our time.
And tell us about where things stand. The House has passed a bill, several bills, I guess.
Yes.
Are there major differences in those bills, or they're all sort of moving the ball forward?
They're all tackling different topics. So we're incredibly proud of the work that House has done and the priorities that we see from our industry moving through there. You know, it certainly started with Chairman Westerman's SPEED Act and his work with Jared Golden and a number of House Democrats that have passed the SPEED Act, which is really important NEPA reforms. We've also seen some LNG reforms that Senator Pfluger led that were also bipartisan. We recently saw a bill actually out of Natural Resources that dealt with APD permitting that we're very supportive of. So you're seeing these move piecemeal, and many of them have bipartisan support, and we're really appreciative of all the work the House has done to date.
So in like almost every industry issue, the problem is the Senate, right? So we're coming to the, I can say that, you can't.
Yeah, so. I'm a House girl, I can say that.
So in the Senate, we've got a holdup, we've got two different committees, which always causes a problem. We've got Republicans, we've got Democrats. So tell us the overall issue and how are you trying to bring everyone together?
Absolutely. So, you know, across permitting reform generally, one of the reasons it's so complex is that these issues fall in a number of different committees and a number of different statutes. So you've got a lot of jurisdictional interests that come to play here. In the Senate, those are primarily through Senate ENR, so Lee and Heinrich, and Senate EPW, so Capito and Senator Whitehouse. And we're actually really gratified and encouraged by how collaboratively they are working together to bring issues to the table and to come up with sort of a consensus comprehensive a consensus comprehensive product that we think will really tackle comprehensive permitting reform as a whole. So we think that that approach makes a ton of sense.
So you mentioned a couple of senators. It seems like Senator Whitehouse is a key player here. Where does he stand? Also, he's said some things recently that seem to be a little positive.
Yeah, we're very encouraged by the constructive way that Senator Whitehouse is engaging with Chairman Capito. We know that in their jurisdiction is NEPA, which is a critical part of this. We know that he's engaging on a lot of really hard issues and environmental bedrock statutes. The goal here, obviously, is not to weaken environmental laws. It's rather to sort of right-size them so they can't be weaponized. So we're maintaining our high environmental standards while ensuring that we can build 21st century infrastructure, and Senator Whitehouse has been a really constructive voice in that.
So we've had this sort of infrastructure system in our country for a long time, and it's sort of kind of worked. What is changing now to make this a priority?
Sure, there's a really great sense of urgency, as you know, around permitting reform. I think that's been building for years, and it's been building for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're seeing demand in our country going up to power advanced manufacturing, to power our technological advantage in the U.S., and that is going to certainly rely on American energy and American energy infrastructure. When you look around the globe, not only do you see economies around the world growing and countries lifting themselves out of poverty, that's going to require a lot of power. And then you throw on top of that geopolitical disruptions, which are at their heart energy disruptions, and you see how intertwined the global energy systems are. And I think that is really laid bare how absolutely critical it is that America leads on energy for energy security, energy reliability, and energy affordability. And that starts with being able to build infrastructure here in the U.S.
So you mentioned the Freedom Act also. Tell us about the Freedom Act and how this could possibly be a breakthrough.
Yeah, so shout out to Senator Cotton, Senator Cortez Masto for introducing the Freedom Act. This is about permit certainty. This is a bipartisan bill that's going to be a critical part of any bipartisan permit reform package. And in the past, oil and gas has certainly been on the receiving end of political meddling when it comes to permitting, whether that be federal permits for oil and gas production on federal lands, whether that be LNG export facilities, pipelines. So we've seen that in past administrations, and we may see that again in future administrations, which is why we think a proposal like the Freedom Act that Senator Cotton and Senator Cortez Masto put forward is so important to ensure that companies like mine and companies that support American energy have the certainty to invest, that permitting reforms, that permitting system is going to withstand political changes in the future.
And you've also had a complication. You've got two major committees in the Senate dealing with this. How does that interplay cause problems?
Yeah, it's a lot of horse trading that doesn't just happen within a single committee, but it is actually happening among committees. And that's why it's so important that this isn't happening in a silo, that it's happening really collaboratively among those big four in the Senate. We say comprehensive permitting reform for a reason, right? Because if you just fix one aspect of permitting reform, then the balloon's going to squeeze to other parts of the process, and that's going to get distorted and abused. So the fact that you have the folks that are doing NEPA, Clean Water Act, transmission, federal lands, all talking to each other and working collaboratively is incredibly encouraging.
And let's talk about timing. So I feel like we just got back from the July 4th recess, but all of a sudden we've got a couple weeks to go to August, and then September is that 3 weeks are in session or 4, and then all of a sudden it's the end of the year. How do you sort of create the urgency, or is there enough time in the calendar to get something done?
The calendar is certainly challenging. The good news is we're not starting from scratch, right? These conversations have been going on not even for months, but for years, with different stakeholders. So we're at the 80-yard line, I would say, on permit reform. The calendar is a challenge, but I think the urgency is there. The urgency is clear. The negotiators understand the urgency, and there is still a very clear window to get this done this year.
There are some people talking about doing this in a lame duck. Is that a good idea or not a good idea?
I think it's always a risk to, put yourself at the fortunes of a lame duck, but I think The fact is, this is a bipartisan, product at the end of the day. It has to be. And I think the sense of urgency is to get this done this year. If it gets done before the lame duck, great. But if not, I feel very confident that this is something we're going to be able to get done this year.
So everyone's saying that the Democrats may take the House, they may take the Senate, we'll see what happens. But given that there is some bipartisanship here, if this doesn't happen this year and Democrats do get some control, is there any chance this could happen next year? Or how do things change?
I think our chances are greatest to get it done this year. We have a lot of very invested stakeholders. We have a lot of very invested chairmen. We have leadership that's invested. I think our best chance is to get it done this year. If there is a change in party, then that comes with different priorities. And right now, the momentum is here to get it done now.
So, Anna, I made a mistake. I should have started the show by talking about your history as a staffer. I mean, this show is designed to be watched by staffers and members. So tell us about your path to Capitol Hill and then out of Capitol Hill.
Sure. So I spent a dozen years on the Hill, most of the time with Speaker Boehner. I was his deputy floor director and floor director when he was the majority leader, minority leader, and speaker, and then I worked for Speaker Ryan as well. And as the floor director, like what you do is you help packages come together. Sometimes they're partisan, sometimes they're not. They're different vote coalitions, but it's fun to be able to now do that on the outside a little bit as well after doing it on the inside.
If there's a 25 or 23-year-old staffer watching this show, what advice would you give them about what made you successful as a Hill staffer?
Honestly, I think what made me successful was being able to talk to so many different stakeholders, both obviously, I worked for the speaker and I worked really closely with my leadership counterparts, but being able to really understand what the mood of the rank and file was and talking to my Democrat counterparts and really understanding, what their priorities and, their equities were as well, really was what helped me navigate that process on behalf of my boss.
Yeah. I feel like one thing that we don't talk about enough is what you're saying is those bipartisan relationships where people get in their silos and don't talk to the other side, which is really a mistake. Do you think in this Congress, though, that things have gotten so partisan? It must be harder to make those relationships across the aisle.
It's harder, but it's not impossible. I think, it is absolutely critical to, make sure, you're talking within your state delegation, to both sides of the aisle and, to focus on your committee. I think there's a lot of opportunities. You might have to work a little harder to make them, but I know that was a critical part of my success. And if you want to be a serious legislator, I think, it's essential.
Ann Bradbury, President and CEO of the American Exploration and Production Council, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brody. It was a pleasure.
You're watching 535. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. It's time to tell Washington, keep America in the lead.
There are moments that shape an organization's future. A policy shift, a crisis or investigation, a market shock. When that moment hits, the clock starts. Markets move in minutes. Regulators, employees, and customers respond instantly. Narrative helps leaders respond with pace, engage stakeholders with precision, and position brands with perspective. So when challenges emerge, you can navigate complexity and lead with clarity before the narrative is defined for you.
Back on 535 News from the Cannon Rotunda on what is a surprisingly mild Tuesday here in Washington, D.C. It's a nice break, isn't it?
It is.
Ms. Emilia Sykes from Northeast Ohio, the 13th Congressional District in her second term as a Democrat representing Summit and Stark and Portage counties south of Cleveland. I want to talk to you about surface transportation, because why not?
Yes.
It's something that actually passed through a House committee and did so with one of these uniquely bipartisan coalitions. So I think it's worthy of the 535 to talk about it. First up, when you explain to your constituents what is in a surface transportation bill, it's got to be a challenge where to start and where to finish. It's one of those monstrous bills. But What do you think are the highlights of here? Not locally so much as the highlights of what the full House has done or the full committee has done.
Sure, and it's funny that you mentioned this is a mild Tuesday, because I was just thinking, we talked about surface transportation weeks ago, and so much has happened, but how important it is that our roads and our railways are well taken care of so that we are able to move to work, to school, to vacation, wherever we may be going, is really very important for a lot of people, especially if you're in Northeast Ohio and you're used to hitting those potholes in the summer. So when I think of surface transportation, I would say think of barrels, and that's the gift and the curse, but that does mean jobs, that means infrastructure projects are being funded, that means we're putting people to work, and we're ensuring that we're repaving the roads, we're putting the resources there, we're getting activities around train and rail and bridges fixed. So those are all those really great government functions that folks don't think about until they're not there, but we're glad that we were able to get this passed out of the House committee with bipartisan support.
Let's go beyond roads, because that is one layer, perhaps the most relatable layer, but we have air travel, we have rail, which is critical in Southeast Ohio for reasons we're going to describe in a moment. But tell us what else was a gathering point for the two parties in this bill.
So there's no air travel in this particular one. However, when you think about bridges, and you know, bridges are a big deal for us in Northeast Ohio, and in Ohio generally, we have the second highest amount of bridges across than any other state in the country. And if you think about bridges all across this United States, they are in disrepair. We have one that I talk about, the high-level bridge, that if it connects Akron to Chicago Falls. If you are a local and you know you drive across it, it shakes a little bit, and it worries you. It's a critical piece of infrastructure. And it's narrow. And so bridges like this are all over the country, and we need to put the resources to reinforce them, to rebuild them, to make sure people feel safe, because our transportation networks really fund our economy. They steer our economy literally. It's how we get goods to people and we get people to people. And so when I think about transportation, as you can tell, I'm a little bit excited about it. It really is what connects us as a country and allows us to see who we are and connect with one another.
And thank you for catching that. Of course, surface transportation does not have air in it. It's surface transportation. So let's talk about the rail.
Yes.
Ohio, not in your district, but Ohio obviously had the calamity in 2023 in East Palestine. The train derailment that led the Ohio congressional delegation to try to get aggressive about buttoning up some parts of rail. What did you get to in this bill to make things safer, or to try to make things safer?
Well, one thing I do want to shout out our Ohio congressional delegation, because under my leadership with former Representative Bill Johnson, we came together with the majority of our colleagues to put forth recommendations that came from the community, that came from Ohio, from our leaders in Ohio, including our governor, to say we need to fix this issue. And it took, unfortunately, several years in order to do it, but we remained in contact with people from East Palestine, Ohio, to make sure that we were putting forth reasonable legislation that ensures this does not happen again. So we have a two-person crew. We have some information about the types of placards. That was specifically from our governor, because when the first responders went to see what was in the placards, we couldn't, or in the rail cars, we couldn't see what was in there because the placards melted. So we put some language saying we have to make those more durable. We had some conversations about engaging and talking to first responders, because many of the first responders in that situation walked into a situation not knowing what they were dealing with. And so all of these things are designed to protect our first responders, our communities, but also say, we heard you. We're listening to you no matter where you are in this country, even in a small village like East Palestine, Ohio, and your concerns matter. And so I'm very proud of our Ohio delegation for pushing it and not letting it fall on the wayside.
And when this happened, it was actually then Senator Vance, Sherrod Brown, then Senator, who were working together on the Senate side on some of these things. Did you run into the criticism that, hey, this is regulation, and this is something that may put a burden on companies and businesses? And if so, how did you either circumvent or overcome that?
Well, first of all, it's about safety, and it's about communities and protecting communities. And we certainly did hear from the rail lobby. They were not supportive of this, and they pushed back pretty significantly, and it's why we didn't have anything for 3 years. But ultimately, folks just had to realize we cannot allow this to be, train derailments to be a cost of doing business at the expense of small towns all across, or small and large towns all across America. So we were able to get people on board, literally and figuratively, and make sure these safety issues were being promote it first and not the profits of the rail companies who were pushing back on us.
But this now, the surface transportation bill is now caught up in this ether, along with so many other vital things, in the disjointed functioning of the House, which we've talked about a lot here on 535. Where do you see the hurdles to getting this thing to the full floor? Do you think it happens anytime soon?
I sure hope so, but the hurdle is going to be with the leadership, the Speaker of the House, and whether or not he is willing to push his members to actually legislate and not just fight amongst each other. The American people need rail safety. The American people need our bridges fixed. We need our roads fixed. And so he has to make a decision whether it's important enough to meet the demands of the American public or meet the demands of those in his caucus who are just trying to sow chaos and dysfunction here in Congress.
Some of your colleagues among the 535 have said the Science, Space, and Technology Committee is the hidden gem of assignments, that it's just a joy. In fact, I talked to Congressman Don Beyer, who was frustrated a couple years back when the ratios forced him off the committee because he was enjoying it so much. What is it about that committee that's either appealing or unique in an experience?
So I wanted to be on Science, Space, and Technology from the beginning, and I recall my colleagues saying it'll be an easy assignment because nobody wants it. But I wanted it because we had a tech hub under consideration, and prior to my being in Congress, they were rejected. And so I wanted to be in the room where to know those decision makers, to advocate for my community. So we were able to get the tech hub, but mostly it's a committee where people see the future, and we're excited about the future of technology, space exploration. We took a bipartisan trip to see the Artemis II launch. We've met with the space crew of that Artemis II. And so those types of things show American exceptionalism and brings members of Congress together. And so it is a glimmering spot of hope in Congress. And so I think there's a lot to learn from our committee. We hope more people get excited about science and space and technology.
What role does that committee play when it comes to the transportation bill? Because there is one.
Yes, there's the research part. So some of the work that we were able to do and some amendments I was able to get in were around the research of trains and how they're moving and whether or not they're creating problems and putting forth an opportunity for us to understand better how these roadways works. And you know, one of the things that we're going to be very concerned about, especially as gas prices continue to increase, is how can we be more efficient? How can we save money? And that is some of the research that we can get from our committee that we're putting forth with our science-based technology jurisdiction and transportation and infrastructure.
And help, again, pull the curtain back for us. You talk about space, we talk about the importance of scientific research. Though it's not in your district, I know NASA Glenn is a massive presence in Northeast Ohio. Explain the connections between Ohio, your region of the country, and the space program.
So we're incredibly blessed to have a lot of connections. Judy Resnick graduated from the same high school I did, and we honor and uplift her memory in all of those in the Challenger explosion, and I am deeply connected to it because of that. But the road to Mars goes through Ohio. NASA Glenn is working on some incredible activities and research, and you also heard the commander of Artemis II shout out NASA Glenn as they were making their way back to Earth's orbit. And so we are a integral part of space exploration in the research that comes with it. And we should all be very proud of that in Ohio and not forget our legacy there.
We mentioned before we started our conversation on camera that there seems to be a collegiality on the Senate, on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, which would set it apart from so many other panels at this moment in time. We watch as this day began, just an absolute partisan fest at the House Oversight Committee. We expect the same perhaps at the Senate later today when the Defense Secretary shows up. What is it about transportation and infrastructure that seems to immunize you from the traditional partisan divide that has become the 119th Congress?
I think there's a couple of things. One, transportation, when you start thinking about cement and laying rail, flying, people are just concerned about safety and getting to where they need to go. There is no Republican or Democratic way to do those things. And it also goes with the members on the committee. We are dedicated to it. You know, one thing I get from a constituent who says, I don't work because they don't see me on TV. Well, I very purposely chose committees to be on that do work, that make sure that we're delivering for the American public. And so while some people might see that as You're on a committee that is sending money and resources to committees, but you're not on TV fighting. And so that doesn't mean that I'm not working. And that's a very interesting way that people in the public are looking at how Congress operates. But there is no doubt in my mind that I'm proud of the work that we're doing. People complain about the detours and the barrels, but that means that our surface transportation and the Build America 250 is working. We're putting people to work, we're rebuilding our communities, and we're making sure that the United States is the best country in the world.
It's not in your committee jurisdiction, but what do your constituents make of the war and the administration's transparency on the war?
Well, it is of all of our jurisdiction in Congress, because we are the ultimate place to go for authorization, but our constituents are concerned about it. We have lost 17 service members. There are hundreds and more who are injured. So this comes to every single member of Congress, and we all have a responsibility to ensure that we understand what's happening and what the goals are. We don't have any goals. We don't have an end goal. We don't know what the president wants to do. We just see more and more money going over to bombing Iran, while people here at home are experiencing higher gas prices, higher costs of goods, tariffs that are making things much more impossible, and people are unhappy with this war and they want it to end. Unfortunately, our president is refusing to listen. The speaker is refusing to intercede and show our power in Congress. And so it is my jurisdiction. It is the other 434 members as well. We just have to get a leadership and a speaker who's willing to assert that power.
You getting more constituent calls about this? Is it consuming more of the inquiries you get?
Absolutely, and a lot of it is based on gas prices. We're talking about surface transportation and getting people to and from, but how they get there is through gasoline that is now averaging over $4 a gallon. And in Ohio, that is unheard of. It is something that we don't see. That's what you see in California. And so people are really having a hard time making ends meet. And on top of that, they're paying more for groceries, for housing, for their health care. And it's really creating a critical time in which people are really using their voices to say, enough is enough. We want you to lower costs. We want to bring our troops home, and we want you to stop this war.
Just a minute left. I want to ask you about the 13th Congressional District. This can be either a very easy or very hard question, so bear with me. What's the best food, or what's the secret stop for people who want to eat in either Akron, Canton, or Portage?
So I feel like I had this question before, but there's a
Did you do okay with it?
I think I did. I think I said Swenson's. It's the drive-through.
All right.
However, there's a very unique thing in Northeast Ohio called sauerkraut balls.
Okay.
It's a very Midwestern thing, and they're fantastic. So if you are in Northeast Ohio,
that doesn't sound fantastic.
They are.
Okay.
It's fried sauerkraut.
They're frying it. Okay,
yeah,
they're frying it.
Yeah,
Everything tastes good.
Everything is better fried. Yes. So that is a very Midwestern, very Akron dish. If you don't want to go to the drive-through, which is also very fun, that we call Swenson's.
How big is the Hall of Fame game when it comes in a couple weeks to Canton?
It is huge.
It looks big on TV.
It is huge. It is such a big deal. It's a lot of fun. We get celebrities and athletes and a giant concert. It is really one of the best parts of the district. So that's why we're the birthplace of champions. We talk a lot about our basketball stars, but we have football as well. So I invite everyone to the Hall of Fame, see the hot air balloons, the parade, the enshrinement, the football game. It's a great time.
And to bring it all full circle, talk about transportation. If you watch closely the Hall of Fame game, you can see I-77
That's right.
in the background behind the stadium as you try to repave it and put the barrels up. Emilia Sykes is a second-term Democrat from the 13th District in Northeast Ohio. Thank you, Ms. Sykes.
Thank
Good to see you again. We're back on 535 in just a moment.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
There are moments that shape an organization's future. A policy shift, a crisis or investigation, a market shock. When that moment hits, the clock starts. Markets move in minutes. Regulators, employees, and customers respond instantly. Narrative helps leaders respond with pace, engage stakeholders with precision, and position brands with perspective. So when challenges emerge, you can navigate complexity and lead with clarity before the narrative is defined for you.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. It's time to tell Washington, keep America in the lead.
He is what your show is called, The Decider.
It's Washington's hottest new show, and it has the Beltway buzzing.
Americans, they know BS when they see BS.
Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Brody Mullins.
Is this era ending and is a new era beginning?
And veteran strategist Lisa Camuso Miller.
Have you ever had to tell a client no?
Talk to the biggest and most influential players.
We wanted $1 million. He said done.
Rewriting the rules of influence.
Business is going to be on the ballot.
Congress needs to do their job.
They become lapdogs rather than watchdogs.
The people who never talk.
That's such a good question.
Talk to them.
It was kind of fun, actually.
It's Washington's only show by and for insiders.
Welcome to the Deciders.
Watch weekly right here on 535.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Leanne Caldwell with Puck News. Our next guest is Congressman Zach Nunn of Iowa. He's here to discuss his No Insider Trading Act. Well, he's also leading a bipartisan push to ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks.
That's right.
We'll also talk about housing, a little bit of veterans, and maybe some Iowa State Fair. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Leanne, hey, thank you very much for having me.
First of all, oh my gosh, Iowa. It's not a presidential year, so everyone forgets about the Iowa State Fair.
God bless Leanne. Every year is a presidential year, particularly at the Iowa State Fair.
Are there any potential candiats coming this year?
We're gonna have a lot. Maybe you'll join us. Maybe we'll start floating that rumor now.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I know.
Here's how it goes.
Any J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio sightings?
I think we're gonna have a couple of those, but most importantly, we're gonna have this year's fried wonton is actually an omelet inside a wonton, and we're gonna have fried butter flavored ice cream. So, multiple reasons to come and get your cholesterol up at the Iowa State Fair.
So you can't just do fried butter, fried ice cream, and then put it on top.
No,
it's like one.
You've got
one
to totally
thing
fry
now.
the entire thing together.
Love it, amazing. So, insider trading.
Yeah.
You have legislation that is that bans any sort of stock trading on the Hill. So first, there is a bill on the Hill that's on the floor this week that you guys could vote on.
That's right.
What is the difference between what is being voted on this week and your bill?
Let's talk about, first of all, the 200 million reasons why a bill like this has to come forward. It's because that's how much money members of Congress made in illicit stock trades already. The reality is 35 members of Congress have already outperformed the S&P 500. In fact, most members of Congress who are doing this are doing actually better than most folks on Wall Street are. And you only need to look at Nancy Pelosi and her husband with Autopilot, who are able to share this information publicly with everybody else. That's a direct result of having not only insider information, but making some really selfish decisions that prioritize yourself and your financial future over the people who elected you. So what these two bills do, I think, is a first step in something that has been long underappreciated. We've got to put real teeth into holding members of Congress accountable for trading on information that only they have access to. As a result, when I came into Congress, I sold all my stock. I didn't have much to begin with.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we put real teeth into the penalty side of this, of saying, it is a minimum of a $2,000 fine or 10% of whatever you earned. And more importantly, any profit you make off of selling that, you've got to give back out of your own pocket. So not only is there no profit sharing here, you're going to get a real penalty that's going to cost you.
And is this just for the member, or is it for family members too?
It's for family members as well. And here's why.
How do you define family?
Spouses. Children of age.
Okay.
The direct things that you would expect, and tragically the things that we've already seen. Too many members of Congress are providing this information directly to a spouse or a child of adult age, and they're making those trades on their behalf. And as a result, they're walking away multimillionaires.
So why, this is a very tough piece of legislation.
That's right.
It's, you know, like you said, penalty, of an actual ban.
Yeah.
What is on the floor is not an actual ban, it's more transparency. So is yours too tough for members of Congress to vote for?
I think it's hard for a lot of members to vote for, but it's still the right thing to do. At the same time, we're going to march forward on holding folks accountable today, and transparency is a first step of it. And we've taken folks from, you know, the very far right on this, Chip Roy, to the very far left with AOC. We've been able to pilot a really aggressive program that starts this process down the road. Right now, it's a joke. People can trade, they can undermine their constituencies by doing this kind of insider trading. And look, if it's illegal for Wall Street, it should definitely be illegal for these guys in Washington.
Yeah.
This is a first step that we've been able to get on the floor, an actual vote. Keep in mind, this has never happened before. So the very fact that we've been able to build a coalition around this and compel leadership, both Democrat and Republican leadership, that they have to take a vote on this, I think is an incredibly first step. And it reflects, you know, where 90% of the American public are. They want this ended now.
Should the president and vice president be part of this?
I absolutely think so, but I know this much. I've got to start with what I can actually control, and we're going to start by holding our colleagues accountable.
Yeah. So what is the conversation like inside the Republican conference when you guys are talking about stock trading?
Yeah.
Is there opposition to it? What are the concerns about moving forward with something like this? Because Speaker Johnson was not on board until recently.
Well, look, I think there are some members of Congress who came in and they had stock already, and they want to know, why should I not be able to do this? So one of the provisions we've made is that if you've got the stock you have, you get to keep it. But if you're going to sell it, you have to give 14 days notice. No more of this selling it right before something happens on the market space. The other aspect of this is, look, I've got 6 kids. I want to invest for their college education. We're not saying you can't invest in a mutual fund or a college savings account. What we're saying is here, you can't trade on information that's highly sensitive, highly restricted, particularly on committees where we're supposed to have oversight. The very fact that I'm on financial services, I shouldn't get to know what an institution's going to do that I'm supposed to be regulating.
Do you feel like you do know?
I do, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I think you talk to any member of Congress, whether they're on armed services with a major trade purchase or a weapons purchase, or somebody who's even on, you know, any committee of jurisdiction where they're going to have information that the rest of the public's not going to have. Most importantly, members of Congress are here to provide oversight and accountability, not to be able to get information and then trade on the inside and make themselves rich.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think the chances are of your bill?
So I think it's very good. We've already seen the very fact that we have aspects of it being brought up this week for a vote. This is a good first start. There's more to do, but look, I've been working on this for 3 years. I've worked with Republicans and Democrats. The very fact that we're making traction on this means that the American people are hearing us. I'd ask more Americans, call your member of Congress, let them know that you want this kind of transparency, this kind of oversight, and most importantly, this level of accountability. Congress can get it done, the American people want it.
Polling is showing that this is really aggravating for Americans. They think that it's you know, elites in Washington have access to money and power that people do not. So it is trending. Are you seeing it in your own congressional race that people are actually talking about this?
Well, you know, it's popular, but more importantly, it's right.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things we worked on back when I was in the state legislature. I'm a 20-year combat veteran. The entire time I was in the Air Force, I didn't profit off of things like Polymarket on where we're going to do a strike next, or finding out what's happening for an upcoming weapons purchase. Members of Congress should not be doing that either.
Great. Speaking of, you're a veteran. There was a bill on the House floor last week about veterans benefits. You had some concerns with it. It was ultimately pulled. What do you want to see improved in that legislation?
Well, first, I want the legislation to come up for a vote, and I think we are going to see that in September. But during the August recess, I want our groups to be able to come together on this. Veterans of Foreign Wars, a group I belong to, want to make sure that pre-existing conditions, things like sleep apnea and hearing loss, are protected now and going in the future. Concur with that. At the same time, we've got great groups who help lead legislation, and I had 3 portions of this bill. They cover down on things that people need. That's everything from veteran suicide. And I led a bill named after a Marine from my district who lost his life to suicide. We want to make sure that, you know, the 7 out of 10 veterans who are not under VA care, who lose their life to suicide, are taken care of proactively. That's what my legislation would have done, and it could have saved the life of many of my young airmen and soldiers coming back. Iowa, my home state, has a veteran suicide rate that is 4 times higher than other states. We've got to get after this. Other things that I think are really important that I want to see, one, survivors benefits. Tragically, Iowa, you know, lost more of our sons and daughters in this most recent conflict when they're on than any other state. A spouse does not get to keep her benefits when she remarries. That's a tragedy.
Yeah.
And the reality is here, I want that spouse, that family to be taken care of long into the future. That's what my legislation did. And tragically, that wasn't taken up for a vote here this month. I want to make sure that that gets a fair hearing. And then there are other items that we've included in this to make sure that veterans in rural communities get access to health care that veterans in, places where there's a VA hospital in Chicago or DC, in Waukee, Iowa, maybe, but in Winterset, Iowa, we're talking about an hour's drive back and forth just to be able to get that level of care. We should be able to provide that locally with our hospitals in the county, not make it a VA requirement.
Are those changes going to be made?
That is what my legislation would do.
Okay.
I think that this is a great area where we can have all the parties come together this August and get a really good bill ready to go starting in September.
And on housing, there was a bipartisan housing bill that passed
That's right.
Congress that was not signed into law,
Yeah.
but became law.
Yes.
Is it enough? Is there anything more that needs to be done on the housing issue, or is this something that you are able to champion back home?
Well, this is a generational change for housing. This is an American dream that Americans can actually take advantage of now. It hasn't happened in decades. Most importantly, look, Wall Street can't come to Waukee, Iowa or Winterset, Iowa and buy up a starter home that's meant to be for a young and beginning family. This alone helps to drive down the cost of housing. Other aspects that we were able to lead in, my provision that really goes after rural housing. Making sure that this doesn't just go to big blue cities, but this goes to every American community, that you can have affordable housing for a first-time home buyer. What we've been able to do in this is work with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to expand existing housing stock, making sure that we more than doubled the low-interest loans so you can get a new roof, you can get a septic tank, things that keep the housing stock already there. We all know this, America needs 4 million new homes. We're not going to be able to build them all. We've got to harvest what we've got. The other aspect of this that I'm really excited about is that we're expanding opportunities for young and beginning home buyers to be able to partner with groups like I did in Iowa. I brought a Democrat colleague, Emmanuel Cleaver, to my district, and we worked with Habitat for Humanity to build new housing stock. We brought the price down by 30% for a new and beginning homeowner. And then we've also put real penalties in place for these institutional investors who try and buy these homes up early, offer an all-cash advantage when a home buyer might have to take out a loan. Wood seller's not going to want to take the all-cash option. But when they're offering 10% above this, we now hold these guys accountable up to $1 million or 3 times the value of the home in a fine. This has never happened before. Making these guys accountable really opens up the housing stock, brings down the prices, and in my home state of Iowa, we have the most affordable housing of high-quality homes anywhere. So don't just come for the Iowa State Fair. Come and stay, build a house. That's right.
This week, you could vote on a shell resolution for war funding, $70 billion for the war. Do you support the war funding? Is this a...
I support key provisions of it, and here's what I'm most focused on. One, making sure that we fulfill the stock of ammunition that we need. This is everything from surface-to-air missiles to air-to-air missiles, things that we have expended in great resource to be able to stop the #1 sponsor of terrorism in the world, and that's Iran.
Yeah.
It also makes sure that we are making more made in American munitions that we can be able to provide to our allies, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's Taiwan, areas where I've really led in making them, guarantors of their own defense. But it comes with an American-made system and American-made workers and American economic growth that come with it. So every dollar we invest in being able to restock is also a multi-X factor increase in our overall domestic economy based on our weapons production.
Is this a permission for the war to continue?
No, I think the war needs to end and be very focused on our 3 goals. 1, Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. 2, Iran stops being a state sponsor of terrorism. And 3, Iran no longer harasses not only its neighbors, but threaten global security by their clear criminal violation, their war crime violation of firing on merchant ships in open water. This is a direct threat to the entire world. And candidly, we should all be holding Iran and the IRGC accountable, not only for the victims within Iran themselves, the Persian people, but actually what they're doing and inflicting on the rest of the world.
Great. You have agreed to 5:35, 1 minute.
That's right.
We have less than 1 minute, so 5:35, 20 seconds.
All right, Leanne.
Okay. What is the best committee assignment?
I love being on financial services, China, and ag. They're all great.
Great. You did it way more quickly than 20 seconds. So Congressman Zach Nunn of Iowa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Leanne,
really
thank you very much for having us. Appreciate it.
Great. On the other side of this break, the chairman of the Senate Environment and Public Works Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure is Senator Kevin Cramer. We'll be right back.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
I work hard. My dad worked hard. That's where I got it from. What I take home is my future and my kids' future. And if I can invest in companies, they're going to reflect my principles, what I believe in. So why would those companies hire outside people to tell them to embrace principles I don't believe in? Congress must protect the financial future of Americans from the foreign-owned duopoly that answers to no one.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. America in the lead.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rome. I've played many roles on TV and film, but today I want to speak to you as myself about a cause that's very dear to my heart. The Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund provides free help to those who have cancer and those who wish to prevent it. They've also worked tirelessly on banning cancer-causing chemicals in our homes and neighborhoods. I want to thank them as a mom for protecting our families. Please donate today at the Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund at stopcancerfund.com.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
We are Lions International, one association of global volunteers, one foundation for humanitarian grants, shaping the future, one act of kindness at a time. We are on a mission to improve health and well-being, to strengthen communities, to serve a world in need. We are Lions International.
To learn more, visit lionsclubs.org.
Oh, welcome back to 535, everyone. I'm Paul Kane of Notice. I'm very happy to be joined here by a former House member.
That's the spirit.
Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, who is the #2 ranking Republican on the Environment and Public Works Committee.
Yep.
And you chair the Highway Infrastructure Subcommittee.
That's right.
I don't know if I have
Transportation Infrastructure.
Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee. So, we want to talk about roads, highways. Where is the Senate on this bill? The authorizing bill that we're working off of expires on September 30th.
That's right.
So we're late July.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Yeah, so good question. Well, as you know, the House Committee, T&I, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, has marked theirs up. I think it's a pretty decent bill. It's a good starting point for us, I would think. You know, we've been pretty focused in Environment and Public Works Committee on permitting reform, which is very closely related to a surface transportation bill. So I would say we're not quite ready for a markup on the Senate side, but negotiations have been going on. The good news is we start with a strong foundation in that everybody wants one. You know, some bills not everybody wants. Transportation infrastructure is generally something everybody wants. The debate oftentimes comes down to the funding. What type of funding? Are we going to continue with the traditional formula funding, which recognizes that 90% of the authorized dollars go to the states, with some sort of percentage going for certain things, but for the most part it gives a lot of power to states, and then 10% for more discretionary funding that's focused more at the the Department of Transportation. That's a bit of an oversimplification. Those are some of the debates we have, but the interesting debate on the financing or funding side now, of course, is what about all those cars that don't pay into the gas tax, and that's another important piece of
electric vehicles.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those things.
And the Highway Trust Fund.
Yeah,
this is one of those issues. I love this and the Farm Bill too that really stand out because they don't necessarily break down on your standard conservative Republican and Republican versus Democratic alliance. Like I was just looking earlier, and the Texas Republican senators have teamed up with the Arizona Democratic senators on trying to rewrite portions of the distribution of the Highway Trust Fund because Texas feels like it's a big donor state. So what is it? Do they need a top line number first? Is that the sort of thing we need to first say, here's how much we're spending? Or is it that more cumbersome issue about how to fund it with, some people want to put some fees on electric vehicles.
Sure.
That becomes a little bit of a partisan issue. Democrats have been trying to push that, but of course a certain close friend advisor of the president's doesn't want to see electric vehicles hit on Teslas and others.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think you start with a bit of a top line number. That said, the top line number used to be however much the Highway Trust Fund brought in when it was adequate. It's not adequate anymore because there's more miles being driven on our roads, heavier vehicles being driven on the roads. The vehicles that do put liquid fuels in their car are much more efficient than they used to be. And then there are a whole bunch of vehicles that, there are hybrids, but then there are also electric vehicles that don't put anything into the Highway Trust Fund. And so the user pay model that the Highway Trust Fund was started, under really isn't what's happening today. So the top line number matters because the difference between the top line number and the Highway Trust Fund is what has to be borrowed from other sources, or worse, borrowed against the deficit and debt. Right, so a little factoid that some conservatives maybe forget.
Am I misremembering this? But from your old House days, Bill Schuster was the chairman of the Transportation Committee, T&I as we call it here.
Yeah.
I think at one point he dabbled with the idea of like a pay per mile driven formula that was out there, and that just caused a lot of trouble with certain industries, trucking industry. And so what are, outside of some sort of levy on electric vehicles, what other ideas are out there to long-term get revenue in so that, people can have highways, bridges, locks, dams, and all the rest?
Yeah, so Chairman Schuster, and I do remember him, I was in the House when he was chairman. He was floating some of these innovative ideas, maybe some might even say progressive ideas. But to his credit, he was the one that took the what used to be it was biennial biennial WRDA bill, Water Resources Development Act, because the other part of infrastructure, a lot of it is water under T&I. And he put it back on a 2-year cycle and committed to that because the 2 years had turned into 4, 5, 6, like often happens with things like highway bills and farm bills. And we've been on that 2-year cycle ever since, which is kind of amazing. We just passed out the WRDA bill out of EPW unanimously. I think it's the 6th year in a row we've done it unanimously. 2-year authorization, thanks going back to Bill Schuster's commitment to that. On the highway piece of it though, and the funding piece, so the most common one is what Chairman Graves actually did in the bill over here, and that is a pretty modest fee, annual registration fee on electric vehicles. I forget what the amount is, maybe you know it, but I don't think it's much over $100, if it's even $100 a year, which probably relates pretty closely to what they would be paying in if they were paying 18 cents a gallon at the pump, because that's what largely the federal tax on gasoline is, or diesel. And so the other thought though is an across the board registration fee for all vehicles that would sort of supplement the Highway Trust Fund. I think most people understandably would view that as a tax increase. For some people that's a non-starter, not acknowledging the fact that we're borrowing to fill the gap, the serious gap between what's in the trust fund and what it's going to take.
What is, forgive me for asking math,
but
do you know roughly what the deficit is in terms of the highway
I
trust
actually
fund?
do not off the top of my head, Paul, and it's funny you asked that because as I was walking over here, I was thinking I should look that number up, and I don't remember what it is, but it's significant. I mean, it's like, per year, it's a good 25-30% of the trust fund gap. It's so I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's a significant amount. that has to be borrowed. And I don't, and I think people would be surprised, by the way, how little they pay into the tax, the gas tax. You know, for a while there was talk of you know, eliminating the gas tax as somehow a means of bringing down the price of fuel, which it would almost certainly would not do, in my view. First of all, it'd only be 18 cents a gallon, and secondly, that 18 cents would be consumed by jacking up the price 18 cents, because that's how Economics 101 works. I think the price of the fuel, you know, is cooked in, if you will. The price of the tax is cooked into the price of the fuel. That said, the per mile tax is one that Chairman Schuster did talk about. Remember 5 years ago when we passed the current bill we're under, it became part of a much larger infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So the Surface Transportation Bill was the foundational piece of it. We did put in there a study, report language for a study on what, you know, what possibilities there might be, what would a per mile tax look like, and all we didn't require any new spending or any new sort of study, but several states already do that. Several states supplement their state fuel tax with a per mile fee. That's wrought with lots of challenges, one, not the least of which is people right away get upset about how do they know how many miles I drive? Who's spying on me?
Yeah.
They forget that modern vehicles sort of collect that stuff anyway, and older vehicles, you know, this is why a flat fee is a little bit easier politically to sell. But when you start tinkering too much, you're either adding a tax, which becomes a tax increase, or you're increasing taxes literally, which is obviously a tax increase, or you somehow you know, put some sort of a annual plus up to recognize the, you know, these trends. All of those are up for discussion, but I think the most politically reasonable one is exactly what Chairman Graves did over here in the House, and what Senator Shelley Moore Capito, the chairman of EPW, has talked about.
So, in terms of the Senate, Sheldon Whitehouse, the ranking Democrat on EPW, told Roll Call that he has, quote, seen no signs of life from the other committees, because it doesn't, it's one of these complicated bills that doesn't just go through one committee. There's Senate Banking, Senate Commerce, and Senate Finance. And, you know, I don't think anybody joins the Senate Finance Committee thinking I'm going to be working on tax provisions on the highway bill. You know, they want to work on healthcare or trade or big tax issues.
Right.
Is there any sign of life? Is there any real discussion among those committees? And, you know, we're 2 weeks away from a Senate recess, and you folks aren't back till mid-September.
Right. I think Sheldon's right that there's not much activity, if any, from the other committees. Although, while there are other committees, for example, banking takes up the sort of the municipal transit sort of stuff. I think, or Commerce does. I'm sorry, Commerce has sort of the rail piece of that. So finance wouldn't get involved unless we did something different with a gas tax. So these are sort of the risks and rewards that you have to consider when you consider adding something into the bill that goes into another committee's jurisdiction. However, EPW is the authorizing committee, and in many cases, it's not unusual to have the main committee put out their bill, and then the other committees respond to that, rather than sort of pre-conferencing with them.
Is it frustrating, you know, you're a year and a half into your new majority, and it still feels like regular order is a hope, a wish, an aspiration, not necessarily something that is happening. You know, the farm bill, the highway bill, these things, like, in days of yesteryear, you used to just get the bill on the floor and you could have a week to 2 weeks of real wheeling and dealing here. And instead, we're coming up on a deadline that's, you know, looming, which seems like...
that we're almost certainly going to blow through.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing an extension of some sort, I suspect, probably as an add-on to a CR or something. More work will get done probably after the election than before the election. That's the way it looks to me. But it's not, it used to be aspirational. It's now just historical. It'll be chapters of history books, I'm afraid. Because quite honestly, this is my 15th year in Congress, 6 in the House, now my, ninth year in the... I
can still remember you as the new guy.
I know, and I've never seen regular order, at least not in a true sense, other than WERDA every 2 years, and they'd sort of lost that, but Bill Schuster brought it back. So I do still think that things like a highway bill are things that have to happen, things like a farm bill have to happen, but a farm bill, that gets kicked down the road for a year or two almost every 5 years. Yeah. There's a lot of downside to doing that sort of an exercise, but yeah, I don't see any way we do a highway bill before the end of the fiscal year, so we have to have an extension and get it done afterwards.
But then you're running into the risk from the Republican standpoint. Yeah. I know this isn't a traditional partisan
it generally is
issue,
not. Yeah.
But the Democrats could win the House.
Sure.
And the Senate is a little bit more of a long shot, but at that point, if they win the House, Democrats aren't going to want to tackle this in the lame duck, are they? Won't they say, well, let's take over in January and see if we have a little bit more leverage on a few points of negotiation?
The only reason I think that could certainly happen, but the reason I think it may not is it goes back to the 62-2 vote in the House T&I committee for the markup, which shows you that probably all of the compromises have been worked out. I think that's pretty much similar in the Senate. With Shelley Moore Capito as chairman, with Sheldon Whitehouse as ranking member, I mean, it's hard to imagine a better pair negotiating things. I have found both of them to be eminently reasonable, maybe remarkably reasonable, because again, it's one of those things that there's at least universal, concurrence that we want to do it. It's not that we don't want. So I still think even in a scenario where there could be a flip or something during the election, the other thing, Paul, is that if you get to a certain point where there is quite a bit of agreement and quite a bit of low-hanging fruit and compromise that has taken place, why not get it done, and then you get that off your plate as you start a new
It's
session.
One of those issues that, if done right, you get lots of political credit for. I grew up outside Philadelphia, and when Josh Shapiro was like a few months into being governor, I-95 in Northeast Philadelphia, a small bridge collapsed, and it really wasn't that incredible what they did. They just figured out how to build a temporary road a little way. They got some permitting reform. They got some union workers in to build this temporary thing, and everybody hailed it as this amazing breakthrough. So there are lots of political wins out there for both sides.
There are, and by the way, and the last one 5 years ago, remember, because it got combined with that larger infrastructure bill, it became more of an issue. But there wasn't a lot of parading around taking credit for the highway portion of the bill, which was remarkable, including permitting reform. It was the original one agency rule that Donald Trump put as an executive order that we actually put in that law under a Biden administration. So, victories aren't that sexy around here. That's why I like this whole format.
Okay, well, we're going to finish up with a House tradition.
I'm not done though. I have a whole bunch of things.
Oh, we could go for a while.
I'm sorry.
All right, so we do this thing with quick fire, rapid fire questions, 1 minute, 5:35 1 minutes we call them.
I'm a filibusterer though.
Oh,
okay,
no.
I'll do my best.
Senate elitist now. Okay. If you could fix one thing about Congress, what would you fix?
Appropriating under regular order.
That's now a historical
thing. I know, but I still have hope. I hear my grandparents talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, getting back to North Dakota is not easy. What do you do to pass your time during commutes?
Well, actually, it's not as hard as you might think, but it is a 2-hour flight to Minneapolis and an hour flight to Bismarck with an hour in between, probably. Paul, I try to keep up with some emails and things like that now that you can get Wi-Fi in most airplanes half the time. I watch a lot I binge things like right now I'm binging on Paramount, on Prime, I'm sorry. I'm binging the old TV series Elementary, the Sherlock Holmes one. It's fascinating.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Who's your favorite person on the other side of the aisle?
Oh, that's hard because I have a lot of really good friends on the other side. Alex Padilla is a great friend. Kirsten Gillibrand and I are in a couple of committees together, work closely together. Her and Alex, I'm gonna make it a twofer.
Okay.
But I have a lot of them. It's hard to pick among my friends.
What is your favorite phrase uttered here that's uttered nowhere else?
Oh boy. Well, regular order is one of them, probably. Blame the parliamentarian.
Blame the parliamentarian. All right.
That's a strictly Senate thing, yeah.
A strictly Senate thing, yes. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to be right back. When we return, Suzan DelBene sits down for an interview with Mariana about how to make healthcare easier and more affordable and Democratic legislative priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
You're watching 535. We'll be right back.
A simple blood test can detect Alzheimer's years before symptoms appear. Congress can connect Americans to early, accurate dementia diagnosis by supporting the bipartisan Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act, allowing Medicare to cover blood-based Alzheimer's screening. Congress has acted to cover mammograms and other life-saving screenings. Now it can redefine Alzheimer's care, unlocking early detection and access to FDA-approved treatments when they work best. Congress, it's up to you. Paid for by the Alzheimer's Association.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
We are Lions International, one association of global volunteers, one foundation for humanitarian grants, shaping the future, one act of kindness at a time. We are on a mission to improve health and well-being, to strengthen communities, to serve a world in need. We are Lions International.
To learn more, visit lionsclubs.org.
Congresswoman, we only have a couple minutes,
Okay.
which is perfect for our 535 1 minute.
Should I be afraid?
Who's the smartest member of Congress?
So I'm really putting you on the spot here.
You know, don't tell anybody this.
But I'm too much of a politician to answer that question.
This is crazy.
What's the best committee?
I do like them all.
On you, baby.
That was good. That was good.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. It's time to tell Washington, keep America in the lead.
So I'm going to do a quick little intro and then we'll get started. Welcome back to 535. I am joined now by Congresswoman Suzan DelBene, Democrat from Washington. Many people have probably heard her name the last couple of years and associate her, which she is, the chairwoman of the DCCC, House Democrats campaign arm. But for those who have come to work with her in these halls of Congress for a long time, she is very well known as a policy wonk. There's a lot of different policy issues that you and I have discussed, even before, you know, a number of your colleagues try and prescribe what exactly Democrats should be talking about on the campaign trail. So I wanted to talk to you about one issue, which is health care. You know, when we hear just lawmakers talk about that issue, it's a lot of broad strokes, whether it's Medicare for all or repeal and replace, regardless of party. But there are actual prescriptions that you could put into place that could have effects very quickly for a number of Americans who, you know, are trying to get insurance to approve a number of medications. You have a bill. It's called the Improving Seniors Timely Access to Care Act. It's bipartisan. Might
Bipartisan.
have a way
Very
forward.
bipartisan.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about it.
So for folks on Medicare Advantage, prior authorization has been in place, which is you have to get approval from your insurance company before a doctor can move forward with certain procedures. And it's turned out that prior authorization has delayed and denied care for millions of seniors. And in fact, the Inspector General from Health and Human Services discovered that it delayed and denied care and was very harmful to patients across the country. So in a bipartisan way, we want to make sure that prior authorization has guardrails in place. First of all, make sure that we are using standard forms, no more fax machines, electronic, because just the process, so many doctors and healthcare providers spend so much time just filling out these forms, and then this form's not right for this, so you have to fill out another form, and that procedural burden is expensive, but takes our healthcare providers away from doing their job of giving care. And it also has delayed care over and over, making sure insurance companies have to report on cases that are delayed and denied, because if a standard procedure is delayed, you should have to tell folks so we can track that down. But in a bipartisan way, we passed the legislation out of the Ways and Means Committee that I serve on, and so now it will go to the floor of the House. We got to get this through because it's critically important to make sure that seniors are getting the care they need, and their doctors are helping decide what care they need, not waiting for the insurance company or have an insurance company deny care. That is normal procedure that people need.
Right. I mean, even just reading, when I was reading about this bill, just talking about the fax machine, I was like, wait, we're still dealing with that? It's just, cutting little curves here and there to help, like you said, doctors and patients.
And to move things more quickly, but a standard form, if you have some questions, have there be a standard form for healthcare providers to have to look at different forms for different insurance companies. They all have different questions. Again, we've heard from doctors who talk about having to hire staff just to respond over and over. And while people's care is being delayed and denied, their conditions get worse. And when their conditions get worse, it's actually more expensive to the healthcare system, worse outcomes for patients, all in the wrong direction.
Yeah. You mentioned it's past Ways and Means. Is there a promise? Do you know it's definitely going to come onto the floor? Because this passed last Congress, right? But being a legislator, you kind of have to be patient because you never know what the next chamber is going to do. I think it died in the Senate, correct me if I'm wrong.
It died in the Senate.
Yeah. Do you
the
think
House
it
did its
done?
job. We got it through the House. It died in the Senate. There was a cost associated with the bill that I believe shouldn't have been there. Okay. I mean, people should be getting the care that they deserve. It shouldn't be more expensive. We shouldn't say a bill makes it more expensive because people are actually getting the care they should be getting. But anyway, we've worked through all the issues. This bill did not have a cost, so there's no excuse on the Senate side now too. So I think we'll get it on the floor of the House, and I think we'll have strong support, and hope to see it pushed through the Senate too.
Yeah. Okay, great. We'll keep tabs on that and see if it moves along this year.
But it's not totally done then.
Oh, right, exactly.
Because there's still this effort happening on traditional Medicare, where the Trump administration put in place a program that they call the WISER program, which is putting prior authorization on traditional Medicare. And there's 6 pilot states. One is my home state of Washington. And so now we see all the problems with prior authorization coming to folks on traditional Medicare who are in these pilot states. And that is also moving us absolutely in the wrong direction, delaying and denying care. So while the bill we were talking about earlier was about Medicare Advantage, there's ongoing work to do to prevent this expanding into traditional Medicare. And we know many people chose traditional Medicare because they didn't want to deal with things like prior authorization. So it's hugely concerning. I've brought this up in a hearing with Secretary Kennedy, hearing from folks in our community, like a woman named Joanne who needed an epidural to deal with sciatic pain, standard procedure. It was denied. They use AI to look at these cases. Her care was delayed. She didn't get a response her doctor was unable to treat her, and it turned out that she fell multiple times because she was in such pain, so her condition got worse. And I brought this case up to Secretary Kennedy, and goes, well, that's not what's supposed to happen. But I'm like, but that's what is happening,
right? What's
to communities.
The solution?
In her case, the next day her case was approved. It shouldn't take a member of Congress having to raise an issue for the right thing to happen. She should have gotten approval right away.
I wanted to ask you about this bill because, AI is talked about all the time, especially up here, different solutions, prognostications, etc. Obviously, it's something that everyday people are incorporating not just in their daily life, but in work. And like you point out here, the AI is not necessarily helping smooth out the process and in the medical system.
Well,
and you've seen a significant uptick since?
It's a combination. The companies who are administering prior authorization in these pilot states in traditional Medicare, their incentive, they get paid when they deny care. So that's a perverse incentive in the first place. And then they're using AI, and AI can be a tool for folks to look at information, but you really need healthcare professionals to be looking at this. This shouldn't be something that's unaided. So it's a combination, all sorts of bad process put together, and the people who suffer as a result are the patients who are subjected to this model. So another version of prior authorization we're fighting because, again, let's let doctors make decisions with their patients on their best health care going forward. And especially when we have these standard procedures that are so important, let's not make it worse and more expensive by delaying and denying care.
I wanted to ask you about the care economy as well. This is something I've heard a number of Democrats talk about. I mean, I think one of the first things I ever interviewed you on was a child tax credit. That's one part of like a broader economy that we're talking about here. I know that this is a priority for Democrats. Earlier today, you were in a briefing with Care Can't Wait Action.
Yes.
And there's this new poll that came out by Impact Research, kind of dovetails into the conversation about what is at the forefront of voters' minds. And the interesting takeaway from that poll to me was that the Republican argument of, well, taxpayer money shouldn't be going to help, people who are either caregivers themselves or nurses who are caregivers helping, people with disabilities or seniors. Obviously Democrats, but also Republicans and independents very much open to the idea of, wait, no, I actually would prefer if my taxpayer dollars go to something like this. I'm assuming that opens a lot of opportunities as Democrats start to talk about, hey, if we're in the majority and we're legislating, what you all can put forward on this front.
Well, it kind of comes together. First of all, this is a life experience that is shared by, it has nothing to do with someone's political leanings. Anyone who had children, had a sick parent or a member of their family who's been ill or not been able to take time off to care for someone. This is an experience that is universally shared and has a big impact not only on families and how our families are doing, but also on our economy. And it is an affordability issue. The number one issue across the country is that people are struggling to get by. Housing, food, childcare, healthcare, energy costs, gas prices, everything going up. And now you talk about kind of these important issues of care, and they're an affordability issue, they're a quality of life issue, they're an economic issue, and so it's not surprising that this rises to the top because, how can you go to work if the cost of childcare is more expensive than the amount of money you make at a job? That has a huge impact on workforce, and we know many, many families struggling with that. And childcare is very, very expensive. Yeah. And then you add onto that whether you even have availability of childcare near you. I talked to a gentleman in my district who lived here. His work was here, childcare was here, and so he had to drive to drop his daughter off, go back to work, drive back, and so it was expensive, but also took a huge amount of time out of his day. Now, of course, with gas prices higher, driving, and so it is experience everyone shares. So let's help our communities out. When we make investments that help our communities, help our kids with a child tax credit, help our kids do better, help families do better, we save money. Yeah. And so we actually get, people talk about return on investment. This is a place where we get a great return on investment. So that should be our priority, is doing things that help uplift our communities as opposed to things that are hurting our communities, like the big ugly bill did with health care and making it harder and harder for families. Let's help families. These are investments, and of course, they're popular because everyone can relate and understands the challenges, whether it's taking care of a loved one, whether it's your parent or a young child.
Yes, so my generation is starting to have kids, and I've been hearing so much more about affordability through that child care
or
perspective.
The sandwich, right?
The
People
sandwich,
are doing both,
that's where my mom's at, right?
Yeah.
So affordability is something I've heard Democrats talk about so much in the last year. Obviously, August recess is right around the corner. I would say it's when campaign season kind of starts in earnest, though I know your head has been there this entire year. Democrats have been pitching affordability, health care, and corruption as planks to what you all might be able to, or not even might, will definitely try and deliver on if you all are afforded the majority. As you're talking to your own colleagues, I know a number of them have obviously been already talking about different buckets within those three big planks, but as you're all thinking of, okay, what realistically can we get done or try and show the American people, especially as, they're going out talking to to constituents about this is the main planks. Is any legislation really starting to, or policies really starting to arise in conversation among Democrats to tackle immediately?
I mean, first of all, affordability is a top issue across the country, and despite the administration and Republicans trying to deny it, saying affordability is a hoax, or actually things are going, great for the economy, people know what's in their bank account. They know what they feel when they go to the grocery store, and food's expensive, when gas prices are skyrocketing, when healthcare premiums are skyrocketing, if they even still have healthcare, because so many people lost healthcare as a result. They couldn't afford it anymore. All of that, housing costs, all of those things are impacting our communities. And people also know that a lot of this is the result of terrible policy. A lot of this is a result of what Republicans have done. Tariffs raising costs on goods, on groceries, the war raising costs for gas all across the country. Their policies, the big ugly bill, all of these things have hurt families, nothing about helping working families get by. So let's talk about how we make healthcare affordable and definitely undo a lot of the damage that they have done. Let's talk about focusing on working families and not giving tax breaks to the wealthy and the well-connected. And we're actually talking to people on the ground. Republicans have been hiding out, but these are issues in purple districts across the country that are going to decide the majority, but there are issues in districts all across the country. And people want someone to be a representative, not be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you're looking at November, but there's a lot of conversations about what you all could do in the majority. It's been interesting to see just generally polling that shows voters are ready and want to vote for Democrats to have control of Congress, but they aren't necessarily trusting the Democratic Party yet, and that's some of that. We've seen some of that hangover from the 2024 election. So I'm curious, how do you win back that trust? And are Democrats already lining up, under those three pillars or more, trying to prove to people, look, this is what we agree on, this is what we can pass. We'll see if the president signs it, but I'm curious how you win that back.
It's about, first of all, having folks who are speaking to the issues that matter in the communities that they're representing or looking to represent. We have incredible candidates running in these swing districts across the country who are laser focused on affordability, on the issues they're hearing from their communities, and who talk about what they want to do and come to Congress. If you're running in Iowa, like Christina Bohannon or Sarah Trungariot, you're talking about the impact these policies have had on agriculture and their farmers, and what you're going to do with respect to tariffs, to deal with tariffs, to lower the cost of fertilizer, to open up international markets again. So people are very specific about the issues that are taking place in their communities, and that's very important. And taking those head on, being strong, independent-minded, present members of the community makes a huge difference. And again, people want folks who are going to come fight for them, not just be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. And they've seen Republicans all they do is wait for Trump to tell them what to do, and that's been kind of the story of this Congress.
Very quickly, what are your August recess plans?
Well, I'm going to be traveling all over the country. Obviously, going to be home. Also, our primary comes up at August 4th. But traveling all over the country, making sure that we're working with communities, helping support candidates, getting work done, because in the end, we need to get work done for the American people.
It's a busy time for you, so I appreciate you making the time for us up here at 535. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks.
We'll be right back.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
In Afghanistan, the IED actually penetrated the vehicle between my legs, but it was a miracle that we all survived in the vehicle.
When I began the process to separate from the military, it was during COVID. And with the issues back home, we just knew we got to come back home and take care of the family. So we had to go stay at our mom's house. And there was already 3 people living there and 5 of us, or 8 people. How many bedroom? Like a 2-bedroom. Like a 2-bedroom house. We were desperate.
So then when we transitioned to Texas, it was very much so like, what are we gonna do now?
When I came home, I needed a new roof due to a storm, and I was about to lose homeowners insurance as well. I applied for Operation Homefront Critical Financial Assistance Program. They've really been a blessing.
I'm in the Permanent Homes for Veterans program. They built a house for me, and it's amazing.
We got the call, this is your house, and the kids and I took off just to go sit in the driveway and cry. It's life-changing. It took us from a hopeless situation, and now we're homeowners. We have a savings account.
The best way to describe Operation Homefront is that it's like a family, because they're always there for you.
I would say you guys are angels behind closed doors.
Operation Homefront has impacted my family in a way that's probably going to be passed down through my family's history. It's definitely going to be a story that's going to be told for generations.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. It's time to tell Washington, keep America in the lead.
Congressman Molina, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Appreciate you having me.
Can you explain to people where your district is and what kind of district it is? What do they grow in your district? And is that a big job industry in your district? Talk to me about this bill you have. It's called the Farms Act. What exactly is the problem you're trying to solve with it? Is this something that the administration could address on their own, or does it need to require Congress to pass a law to really fix it? Is this bipartisan at all? Do you have Democratic support? So what's the brass tacks here? Who's your counterpart in the Senate, and what is the path forward you see for this legislation?
Oh my gosh. You know, let me think about that.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Brody Mullins. Pleased to have Rob Nichols here, the President and CEO of the American Bankers Association. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Brody. Appreciate the invitation.
So, perfect time. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Let's take care of a quick one right away. French Hill has got this bill on the floor today. What would that bill do, and where do you guys stand?
Main Street Capital Access Bill. French Hill has done a great job chairing the House Financial Services Committee. The bill does lots of things. I'll point out, too, it helps with de novo bank creation. Also encourages tailoring, so you basically supervise a bank more based on risk profile and activity and business model, based just not on asset size alone, which is a very sensible way to supervise the bank. So French Hill has done a great job. It's bipartisan. A lot of Democrats support it as well. Not a lot of bipartisan things in Washington right now, but credit to French Hill and Andy Barr and others in the House Financial Services Committee for ushering that through.
And let's get to the main issue right now, crypto. I mean, everyone in D.C. in your world is focusing on this bill.
Yes.
Let's maybe go back a little bit to the Genius Act.
Sure.
So tell us sort of how we got here starting last year.
Yeah, so roughly a year ago, Congress passed the Genius Act, and one of the provisions they put in there we thought was pretty important. And it basically said they didn't want deposits to leave banks, go into payment stablecoin, and then have yield, interest, or reward on that, for fear that banks would not be able to lend money to farmers and small businesses and do mortgages and that sort of thing. So they put language in there saying that issuers of payment stable stablecoin, and there's a reason they call it payment stablecoin and not deposit stablecoin, couldn't offer those bank-like products. However, there was a kind of a loophole. The language wasn't as precise, Brody, as it needed to be. So that's what this debate and this dialogue is now. We're trying to just tighten up the language so that the bill does exactly what the senators say it does.
And that's the Clarity Act that we're talking about.
Yes, that is the Clarity Act. We're a year later, and a number of senators on the banking committee have put together language that's basically improved that says that issuers of payment stablecoin can't offer yield, interest, and rewards, and we simply want that language to do exactly what the senators want it to do.
So I feel like the clock is the most important, but since that's out of our control, let's talk about the other major issues before getting back to the clock. So talk about the major issue for you, and then we'll talk about the Trump ethics issue.
Again, for us, it's the language in the Clarity Act. We simply want clarity in the Clarity Act so that the issuers of payment stablecoin can't offer yield, interest, and rewards. That's what the senators want, and we simply want the language in the bill to do exactly what they say it does. So that's our issue, and I've been up in the Senate for the last several days meeting with senators of both parties. And I'm encouraged by the progress that we're making in these conversations as we speak. There are, to your point, some other issues that we're not actively involved in, but that are being debated right now.
So, and this is not your issue, but a big thorny one here is an ethics issue involving Donald Trump. So the background is that Democrats believe or worry that this bill would help Donald Trump and his investments. They're not happy about all the investments that Donald Trump has made in crypto. There was an ethics report that came out last week, or a disclosure report, saying that Trump had made $1 billion or more from his crypto investments, and that really upset Democrats. Is there possibly a language compromise to come out there that would please both Donald Trump and Senate Democrats?
We'll see. It's not our issue, but the news has been reporting that as early as today, there might be language that will be coming out for folks to review. So we'll see. You and I will learn it simultaneously.
Right. And then a criticism is that you guys don't support this bill, but you say you do support the bill, you just want these small changes.
Yes, surgical, tiny changes to be precise. We do support the bill. We think digital assets are very important. We think the U.S. should be a leader in payment stablecoin. We think we can be the banking capital of the world and the crypto capital of the world. This doesn't have to be a lose-lose in our opinion. It can be a win-win with these tiny, surgical, precise changes, and that's what we're seeking.
And now let's get to the clock.
So having a digital asset framework, supervisory framework, we think is important. So suggestions that we're opposed to the Clarity Act are just not accurate.
And let's talk about the clock, which is the most important thing here. We've got this bill, which everyone in your industry is focused on. There's other major priorities. Every industry has a big bill that they're focusing on, and all of a sudden there's really not much time. I feel like we just got back from the July 4th recess, which we did, and all of a sudden, is the Senate even going to be here next week? Unclear. So things have to happen today, tomorrow, or the next day, right?
Yes, well, you and I both know we've been around Washington a bit. We're going into a midterm year. The August recess starts on or about August 6th or 7th, as you and I both know. And historically, a lot doesn't get done post-August recess in a midterm cycle. We'll see. We're doing our best to communicate our views on this bill. I'm sure the other side is doing the same. But no, the clock is certainly a consideration here.
So regardless of what happens the next couple of days, you're going to come back. We're gone for August for almost 6 weeks. Back in September, there's only 3 or 4 weeks there. Is there enough time then? I mean, let's say something passes the Senate. It still needs to be conferenced. Do you know if there'd be major disputes between the House and Senate on this one?
Time will tell. It's hard for me to predict if there'll be major disputes, but there are a series of issues, as you have articulated, that are still being litigated and debated right now.
And what about the lame duck? What would happen if Democrats took over the House or the Senate? Would that change the dynamics in a lame duck?
I don't know. Time will tell.
Okay.
I'll say we're meeting with both parties and making our case, and I think time will tell.
Okay. This question may lead to the same answer, but let's say Democrats win the House or the Senate. Is this bill dead, or does it have any chance to?
No, they would start again with a new draft. And I know that the crypto sector wants to get this done now. We would like to get this done now, assuming we get the changes, the very, very small changes that we're seeking. And I think having, again, a supervisory framework for digital assets is really important for the United States. So we would like to see this get done.
So in general, you think it's important to have some rules for digital assets than none?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an important sector of the economy, but having a supervisory framework makes a lot of sense. And on that's something we're in heated agreement with the crypto sector.
And keeping on Democrats, let's talk about the crypto industry super PAC. So super PACs are something that was started under the Citizens United decision 15 years ago or so. Most big companies, and I'm sure most of your members, have stayed away from super PACs. The crypto industry is one of the few industries that's sort of pivoted from that and gone heavy into super PACs. Do you think that's been a net positive or net negative for that industry?
I'm honestly not sure. I think asking an elected member of Congress would be a better person to speak to that. But I will say, I do think it's important for any industrial sector to be able to make their voice heard and communicate to the public policy community their views on issues. That's part of the American system that we all know and love.
And finally, I should ask in the beginning, tell us a little bit about the ABA. Who do you guys represent?
Sure.
And
So there's about 4,300 banks, Brody, in the United States. We represent that entire community, from tiny mom and pop community banks, which is the bulk of the U.S. banking system, to our large globally active banks, mid-sized banks, regional banks. It's about 2 million women and men who work in those banks. And the ABA has been around. We just celebrated our 150-year anniversary.
Wow. And tell us about yourself a little bit and how you got to this job and how long have you been there?
So I've been the CEO for 10 years, just hit the 10-year mark. And before that, I was the CEO of the Financial Services Forum for 10 years. And then before that, I worked in both Bush administrations, for H.W. Bush in the West Wing, right next to the Oval Office, right out of college. And then I worked up here in Capitol Hill in the House and the Senate, where we met in the mid-90s.
Right.
And then I was an assistant U.S. Treasury Secretary for George W. Bush.
Right. And we've talked a lot about crypto. What are some of the other major priorities that you're working on for this year and for next year?
Preventing fraud and scams is a huge one. It's insidious, the amount of fraud and scams in the system. Banks are doing their part to defend the customers and clients from clicking on all these, romance scams and all these fake scams. So what we're trying to do is work not with the social media companies, where a lot of the fraud is created and then it's transmitted to you and me through our mobile phones. Banks are kind of the goalie defending the customers and clients from that. So we're trying to bring these other industrial sectors into the debate so they can do their fair share to stop the fraud and scams that are really, really creating a big problem in the United States.
Let's go back to actually one more question
Sure.
on crypto. So French Hill has said a couple times that the Genius Act sort of created cell phones, the actual phone, and this bill would sort of create the network. Is that how you see things?
Well, I see it as a supervisory framework for sure. So I don't know if I would use French's analogy. Huge fan of French Hill, let me be clear. But I would probably choose a different term.
Great. Rob Nichols, President and CEO of the American Bankers Association, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brody.
I'm Brody Mullins. We'll be right back on 535.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
Here on Capitol Hill, the 535 are in charge, the members of Congress. But in a democracy, in the people's house, you need to be heard as well. So if you have questions or comments or ideas, submit them to us at 535.news, because here with us, the floor is yours.
He is what your show is called, The Decider.
It's Washington's hottest new show, and it has the Beltway buzzing.
Americans, they know BS when they see BS.
Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Brody Mullins.
Is this era ending and is a new era beginning?
And veteran strategist Lisa Camuso Miller.
Have you ever had to tell a client no?
Talk to the biggest and most influential players.
We wanted $1 million. He said done.
Rewriting the rules of influence.
Business is going to be on the ballot.
Congress needs to do their job.
They become lapdogs rather than watchdogs.
The people who never talk.
That's such a good question.
Talk to them.
It was kind of fun, actually.
It's Washington's only show by and for insiders.
Welcome to the Deciders.
Watch weekly right here on 535.
When your child gets sick, time is everything. Getting treatment sooner means more options and a real chance at getting better. Thankfully, almost every new treatment for cancer is available here. And because of strong American leadership, we get these new medicines first. But that can change fast. In other countries, many are told to wait or go without. If Washington copies other countries' policies, we'll have to wait too. It's time to tell Washington, keep America in the lead.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Suzan Davis. And earlier this month, the Trump administration announced that they were not going to renew the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. If nothing is done, it stands to expire in 2036. Those talks continue this week between U.S. and Mexico. I'm joined now by Congressman Adrian Smith of Nebraska. He sits on the Ways and Means Committee and, even more important for this discussion, chairs the Trade Subcommittee.
Right, we've been busy, certainly.
Welcome to 535.
Thank you.
Let's go back to a couple weeks ago. What was your reaction when you heard that the president declined to renew USMCA in its current form?
Well, I don't think anyone expected that the president on July 1st, a date, not necessarily a deadline, but a functional date, that the president made an announcement that the status quo will not be continued. So I think a lot of folks have understood the president wanting to strengthen, I can't speak for him, let me just say that, but you know, we need a stronger USMCA, one where enforcement is robust. So there's some concerns about maybe some unintended dynamics from 6 years ago. And certainly the fact that Canada has just taken an approach of kind of walking away from the negotiations. I don't know why they would think they would strengthen their hand by doing so.
Yeah, I'll talk more about Canada in a bit, but I do want to say I read in a statement that you put out that in the 6 years since USMCA became law, you said our trading partners have, quote, repeatedly failed to fully uphold their commitments. Can you be more specific about what those failures have been in the past 6 years?
Well, Canada and dairy has been a huge irritant. And one that, you know, was discussed before, thought we got some progress on that. Turns out, no, that's not the case. And so that gets a lot of attention. But, you know, Canada has attempted, you know, in the opposite direction they should be moving on the digital side and streaming. You know, they've attempted to place a tax on our content, basically, in our country, ultimately, in a very discriminatory fashion.
How does that work? How do you put a tax on digital content?
Well, in the U.S. being the world's capital for digital, that has made us a target.
Yeah.
And so countries, the way they structure it, make sure that it's just from us and not even from themselves or and sometimes even other countries. So Canada announced the digital services tax and streaming. Then President Trump said, no, that will trigger a tariff. And so they stepped back from that. That's a good sign. But, you know, when it comes to USMCA, it seems like Canada has just kind of walked away from any kind of negotiations. And Mexico, in contrast, has been very engaging. And I certainly appreciate that. And, you know, a negotiation always requires, you know, having the conversations we need to have, a back and forth, sharing perspectives, sharing ideas, explaining our concerns. But Canada has chosen a different path.
Do you have any sense of what the why is behind that? I mean, obviously there's been some tough relations between U.S. and Canada, but a trade agreement like this is still fundamentally important to their economy and to their country. Is it just personality driven, or is there something more substantive there?
I think it is some personality. You know, Trudeau's off the scene now, so changed dynamics. Their newer prime minister, you know, that has come to his office, some would say, because of dynamics here in the U.S. Yeah. So I think ultimately, though, you know, some leaders in Canada have told me that they're hurt. You know, I'm sorry to hear that, but the fact of the matter is, it's time to move forward. USMCA is important. We want a stronger USMCA. I think Canada would too. I mean, I'm speculating on that, but likewise with Mexico. China's out there wanting to compete in unfair ways. Let's lock arms together here on our continent to make sure that we strengthen our position here, certainly as it relates to competition from China.
Is it possible that this trilateral trade deal could transition into two bilateral trade deals? I mean, do you see a fundamental tension between these three countries? It's very notable to me that the U.S. is just in Mexico this week having one-on-one conversations with that country.
That's certainly a possibility. I want to make sure that we end up with as robust and strong agreement where we can benefit from each other as possible. So, Canada, though, kind of just walking away and not engaging, I think really stands to harm their position, weaken their position overall. And, I don't think they want, a one-on-one with us necessarily. Hard to say for sure, though, at this point from the non-engagement.
Specifically on agriculture, you come from an ag state. How do you feel that USMCA has treated agriculture, and you can focus even on your home state? I believe corn is one of your largest exports. And what do you want to see changed if this deal is going to be rewritten in terms of agriculture provisions?
Yeah, well, the biotech white corn issue that came about right at the beginning of USMCA from Mexico, ultimately, we pushed back. Even the Biden administration, after a while, they decided to formulate the dispute panel, and we prevailed. Very clearly, we prevailed. Now it was kind of a cumbersome process. There could be some room for improvement in kind of moving that along more quickly, something like that moving forward. But ultimately, when you look at enforcement, that I think could generate a stronger, a commitment for stronger enforcement from our trading partners. Mexico, grain shipments from the U.S. into Mexico face discriminatory inspections that other, domestic grain does not face in Mexico. We hear from U.S. companies who have a presence in Mexico that their tax agency in Mexico is foisting on them more audits and just in an inconsistent and a discriminatory fashion. So those are two examples that I think, getting those ironed out would be a major step forward for a stronger USMCA.
Is it fair to say that it sounds like you think that the USMCA on the whole is a good agreement and that some of the changes that need to come are around the margins, or is there anything fundamentally bigger that you think needs to change about this relationship?
I think, overall USMCA has served us fairly well. I think what we have to take away from this, though, and this is the first of its kind, having a review of a major trade agreement, that it really requires us to pause a little bit and say, how can we make this better moving forward, realizing we've benefited. I think USMCA is one of President Trump's biggest achievements from his first term. Very bipartisan. Ambassador Lighthizer was very diligent in that negotiation of making sure Democrats were heard and even included some of their priorities. So what's interesting is, as bipartisan as that was, here was a Trump priority ultimately under a Pelosi speakership and a Democrat majority, and that was reflected in the vote. And then that teed up a major opportunity for Team Biden to do that again with other trade agreements, and it was crickets. I mean, it was so silent for 4 years on trade. Other countries, it's my sense, other countries expected more out of us. And so with Biden doing so little on trade, and then enter President Trump for a second term, having experienced some successes from his first term on trade, building off of that moving forward. Now we've, and I'm not a fan of tariffs, but I'm a fan of engagement, and the president has proven that he's gotten concessions from other countries. And so I think I see this as an opportunity to move forward. Ultimately, congressional codification, so we can add to the durability of the president's priorities of leveling the playing field, ultimately reducing trade barriers that can lead to really good results.
What is your sense of the urgency around these negotiations? 2036 is a long time away, and I feel like in Washington time, negotiations often don't come together until the deadline is approaching. Do you see this as going to be sort of a long, protracted conversation, or is this something that you think the president's going to want to tie a bow around before he leaves office?
Oh, I think the president wants resolution much more quickly than what the 10 years may allow.
Yeah.
But I looking at, these dates involved, I'm like, that I think it was a good move 6 years ago to say, okay, let's have this 6-year review. Let's establish the July 1 date. That I think it does add urgency. And to call it a deadline probably isn't accurate, but I think it's a launch of more serious discussions. And when it comes to trade, certainty means a lot. So the closer we get to uncertainty, that can have some economic negative impacts. So moving forward, though, I think it's absolutely important that we have conversations and engagements that, like I said, ultimately lead to fewer barriers, and we can benefit from that.
You said you're not a fan of tariffs. Earlier this month, a couple of months ago, the Supreme Court ruled against the president on some of his sweeping tariff policies. Do you think Congress needs to do more in this regard? Obviously, the president has a very clear agenda, but it seems like the Supreme Court is saying, hey, some of the stuff you want to do, this is your job, not his.
Well, the president, I think, ultimately will prefer durable policies, and so that will require Congress to take a vote. I know that a lot of my Democrat colleagues, for as much as they're speaking out against tariffs right now, not much was done. In fact, when it comes to tariffs, nothing was done during the Biden administration. So I think this is a moment that we can say, hey, let's work together to reduce barriers. Non-tariff trade barriers don't get the attention that they deserve. And I know the president, though, is singling in on non-tariff trade barriers that can be much more harmful, for example, for our ag exports than even tariffs. And I say that, not a fan of tariffs. I'm not a fan of trade barriers, so let's work together to level that playing field, because other countries have shut us out in different ways, and President Trump is bringing more attention to that, and I think we can be better for it.
Do you see that trade as one of those areas where there is actually an opportunity for bipartisanship? Because I think especially in your party, there's also been a warming towards labor, there's more working people in your party, and trade is traditionally, a lot of these agreements and unions have aligned with Democrats, but it seems like the mix has sort of changed in the interest of how these agreements get done, and there's maybe more common cause across the aisle than there has been at other times.
I do think trade writ large is more bipartisan than it used to be. You take some of the cases, some of the disputes with Mexico, that draws a bipartisan concern very quickly. On digital, for example, very bipartisan concerns. When you look at the digital economy across our country, it comes from both parties. And I think that strengthens our hand as well. And the fact that President Trump and his team, the facts are on their side in terms of saying, hey, this engagement is proving effective. And ultimately, though, we want durability long term, and I think that could lead to a bipartisan vote to get the policies we need moving forward.
One unrelated question, but it's newsy of the week. Reconciliation 3.0. What do you think about this? Is it a good idea, and do you think it's realistic? I think it's a tool in the toolbox. I'm willing to look at how we can most effectively accomplish what we need to do. It does concern me when some of the basics aren't getting the Democrat votes, like I would hope. Whether it's NDAA or whether it's the functions of government that I think both sides support, and yet the Democrats don't want to play ball. And so that's disappointing, and so that pushes us into reconciliation and that mechanism that can be used, and certainly we want to make the most of that. Congressman, before we go, in our last minute, I'd like to do a little part of our segment called the 535 1 minute, okay, where we ask you a couple of unrelated but yet still difficult questions. If you could fix one thing about Congress, what would it be? It would be getting our fiscal house in order to really focus on the future, the financial future of our country, and in a bipartisan way that addresses those items that we know need to be addressed, and addressing them sooner rather than later will save a lot. How do you kill time on the plane rides home? Oh, I check in on the hometown radio station, KNEB.com. That's the local radio station that has a great website and an app to make sure I keep up on everything at home, whether that's on the way home on the plane or every day
when we're in session in Washington. You know, generally in Nebraska when we're not in session in Washington, and so try to keep up on local things certainly.
And finally, what is the best food in your district?
The best food, well, beef is it's hard to beat in Nebraska, so it boils down to what cut probably, and the ribeye is certainly my favorite cut.
Ribeye steak.
That's right.
Congressman Adrian Smith from Nebraska, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That is it for us today, but coming up on tomorrow's show, we will have Congressman Scott Peters and Gabe Evans to talk about their bipartisan surface transportation bill, and we're also going to dig into healthcare with Tennessee Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger. On behalf of all of us here, thank you for watching, and remember, if it's important to the 535, it's important to us. We'll see you tomorrow.